93, 93, 93. This is Amon Asharenew from asharenew.com. Now we will be speaking about the world economy at risk of deglobalization. The sanctions on Russia could split the global economy into geopolitical blocks, experts predict. Getting more context here, Russia's military operation in Ukraine and the subsequent Western sanctions on Moscow might push the global economy into geopolitical fragmentation. The IMF warned in a report published on July 26. Here's a direct statement. A serious risk to the medium-term outlook is that the war in Ukraine will contribute to fragmentation of the world economy into geopolitical blocks with a distinct technology standards, cross-border payment systems, and reserve currencies. According to the IMF, such a split would prevent the global community from jointly addressing global problems. Fragmentation may also diminish the effectiveness of multilateral cooperation to address climate change, with the further risk that the current food crisis could become the norm. So what they're saying here is, because of what's occurring in Ukraine, this has given us a inability to deal with global issues because so much money is being spent on weaponry in war in Ukraine. So because of all this money is being directed towards the war in Ukraine, what they're saying is it's going to be hard to deal with climate change. It's going to be hard to deal with the global food crisis. So once again, as I was speaking about in the previous videos, what used to be the norm is now becoming a privilege. So what they're really saying is climate change is something that we're not going to be able to deal with like we should. And the food crisis is not going to be something we can deal with like we should. So expect to continue to see empty shelves, continue to deal with this unprecedented weather, whether it's heat or cold, because now we're preparing for a very cold winter, especially in Europe because of the Russian oil. So Europe is already bracing themselves for a very hard winter, and we see what's going on in the summer. You know, there's wildfires popping up all over the place. There's wildfires in Europe, wildfires in California, and so on and so forth. So basically, in the hotter months are going to be hotter, and the colder months are going to be colder, because we're not sure if we're going to even be able to heat the homes. And this is according to Europe, because all this money is being directed into this war, which doesn't seem like it's going to end no time soon. So because this war is not going to end no time soon, as the experts are predicting, expect this to become the norm. Like, do not expect this to change. So again, this is what the experts are saying. So irregardless of what the media tries to paint, what the story that they try to paint, that this is transitory, that this is temporary, the actual facts is showing us that this is just simply not the case. The actual facts is showing us that the further and further we go into this Clipoffic tunnel that we call the conflict in Ukraine, which did not have to happen at all, but because the U.S. put the battery in the back of Ukraine, and I'm going to speak about that in a later video, because we put the battery in Ukraine's back to make them feel like they can actually win against Russia, because we made that happen and we're investing all these billions of dollars into this conflict. We have invested about $60 billion plus at this point, because we keep giving all this money. And again, that money could be used for food, for the supply chain crisis, all these things that we are actually dealing with in real time that need to be solved. We can't even solve the issues because we are more invested in a war in Ukraine. And you just got to ask yourself, what is so important about Ukraine that Ukraine just has to win? That we're going to invest however much money we need to invest. We're going to give them whatever weapons they need. Why is it so important that we in the U.S. are the biggest contributors of this conflict? What does the U.S. have to gain in Ukraine? Because we would think, like, why is Ukraine is all the way over there? Like, what do we have to gain? Why is this even our problem at all? Especially when the last president, Donald Trump, actually went to meet Putin and none of this was occurring. And this, as we know, is because Joe Biden wants to expand NATO, is expanding NATO, which Russia warned that if you continue to do that, then there will be consequences, because now you are putting us at risk, because if Ukraine starts to hold nuclear weapons, then we can potentially take Russia out of the picture, and Russia is just simply not going to have that, which they have already made that known. And again, that's why Donald Trump was able to go over there and meet with Putin. And that's why Donald Trump had no interest in expanding NATO, because he had no interest in having a conflict in Ukraine. However, when Joe Biden became president, all that went out the window, and now we're going full speed ahead into this conflict. And now we're just getting back all the karmic forces that comes with making those decisions. So everything that we are experiencing, whether we want to call it supply chain issues, the global food shortage, and all these other issues that we're dealing with, this is just the karmic residue of us going full speed ahead into a conflict that we simply basically cannot win, because it does not seem like Russia is losing whatsoever. Ukraine is definitely not winning the war, even though, again, nobody is technically calling it a war. They're just calling it a conflict, so it's not technically a war. But now we've got, North Korea is trying to go to battle with South Korea. Then China is trying to go to battle for Taiwan. So it's like, for whatever reason, now we just have all this military action, and everybody is bracing themselves for some type of world conflict. And we just got to ask ourselves, what is this truly all about? Like, what are we truly trying to accomplish in Ukraine that we just have to invest all this money? Again, we're not going to get told the truth by the mainstream. That's why we have to go to foreign outlets to even get half of the truth. Of course, they're not going to tell us the full truth. They're going to only tell us half the truth. But at least we can put together the other half. Once we got half of the truth, we can put together the other half. And this is what we're doing now. Again, there are biolabs in Ukraine. They are developing diseases in Ukraine. They have a whole plan for Ukraine, and that's why we're defending Ukraine. Because again, like, why are we defending it? Because we have a whole plan. We're not going to develop these things on American soil. That's why they call it a proxy war. We're going to develop all these bioweapons in Ukraine, and we're going to defend it at any cost. And that's why we're defending Ukraine, because we have invested interest in Ukraine. Ukraine is a very pivotal entity when it comes to weaponry, especially of a biological nature, especially of disease. They're going to develop new diseases. As they say, China developed coronavirus. Well, that was the theory that it came out of a laboratory in Wuhan. We'll expect the next disease to come out of a laboratory in Ukraine. Why else will we be defending it? But again, we're not going to ever hear that. But I got another video coming up, and we're going to see exactly what's going on with this Zelensky character. What is Zelensky really all about? I'll be speaking about that in a future video that I'll be doing in a couple minutes. So till then, 93, 93, 93.